Hi, good morning. On behalf of Midwest Dairy and Dairy West, I'd like to thank you for joining the webinar this morning on Hispanic consumers and their path to purchase dairy food and beverages. As you listen to the research we're presenting, you might have questions or comments, and we've reserved time toward the end of this webinar for audience Q&A. Also, as an FYI, this webinar is being recorded for distribution later this week. And I'll now turn it over to Beth Bunton, Business Development Manager for Midwest Dairy, to get us started.
Thanks, Brianne. First, I want to talk about what you're going to see today in our session. We have 5 areas that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about the research in terms of overview, the Hispanic consumer, what their shopping habits are, talk a little bit about their retailer preference, where they're shopping and why, and then, most importantly, the views that our Hispanics have on dairy. We're going to then wrap up the presentation with some ideas that you can take with you to generate some sales against this important target in your stores. First of all, I want to talk to you about where we got all of this research from. We looked at about 5 studies that are out there, and as you know, there is a lot of research against this target. We condensed a lot of that information, and we also, importantly, fielded our own research. Midwest Dairy, and as Brianne mentioned, in collaboration with Dairy West, developed a customized study. And what we wanted to do there was focus not only on the Hispanic consumer, but their relationship to dairy. We used that information as a basis and then augmented with all of the other research that's available. And that's what you're going to see today. So now let's highlight the Hispanic consumer, and more importantly, how they fit into the population as a whole and what makes them unique. As you probably know, the Hispanic population continues to grow at a very rapid pace within the U.S., from both an immigration and expanding the families currently here in the U.S. It's projected that by 2020, the Hispanic population will be the 2nd largest in the U.S. As of July, in 2015, this population totaled about 56.6 million people, or about 17.6 of the total population, making the Hispanic origin the nation's largest ethnic racial group. And when you look at 2050, that projected population is expected to be 29% of the total population. So it's a very important segment. So now let's look at the Hispanic population and where its roots take place. So you obviously have Mexico, Central and South America, countries like Puerto Rico, and then also Spain and Portugal. And what this means to us is, unlike the Europeans who arrived here in the U.S. and primarily entered through the East Coast and immigrated west, the Hispanic population really comes in on both shores and across the southern border. So it has a much more vast impact in how quickly it's arriving in the U.S. Also, when you look at where this population concentrated and where they ended up planting roots, it migrated all across the U.S., and this was mainly due to job opportunities and family ties. But as you can see from this chart, the Hispanic population growth is occurring in all regions of the U.S. So let's take a look at the Hispanic buying power. Not only are Hispanics a large portion of the population in the U.S., they also have, as you know, a tremendous amount of economic clout. And this will continue to grow as the population expands into the future. So if you take a look at the growth in the U.S., the Hispanic buying power over the last 5 years has grown by 50%. And this is just since 2010. And when you look at how that's expected to project into the future, we're looking at $1.7 trillion by the end of this year. Clearly, the Hispanic population is an important demographic for us all to focus on. So let's take a look at the Hispanic population and its shopping habits. I imagine that what you've seen so far in terms of the growth is not a surprise to you. But let's look at what they're doing in store and what motivates them behind their buying decisions. Based on the Latin study, one of the 5 studies that I showed you earlier, they define motivating factors and the decisions to drive buying for the Hispanic consumer into really 5 categories, and you see them here. Hispanics like to shop with others. That goes probably hand in hand with the larger families and who they're bringing with them on these shopping trips. They have fewer pre-shopping activities in terms of research. I'm going to go into that in a little more detail. They're spontaneous and impulsive. They like to try new products that are in store in terms of sampling, or when they see merchandising against a new product, they're more likely to try. And they choose fresh over price whenever they're given the opportunity. In the next few slides, I'm going to take you into a deeper dive and discuss the way that retailers and manufacturers can engage this important Hispanic shopper. As I mentioned, this consumer likes to shop with others, and when you look at the index between shopping alone and shopping with others versus the general population, it's pretty significant. A large portion of them will shop with partners, and more important is that they're shopping with their kids. And we all know that when you have kids with you on a shopping experience, there are going to be more things ending up into your basket, and they have a great influence on what those items are. As I mentioned, we've got about 33% of the Hispanic consumers will shop with a spouse, and about 25% will shop with children, and that's significantly more than the general population. Let's look at pre-shopping behavior. In terms of the Hispanic consumer, they spend a lot less time preparing for their shopping trips. When you look at items like, do I check my pantry? Hispanic population does not do that. Are they looking at recipes? Probably not when they're planning their trip to the grocery store. And then significantly less are really looking at online. But that's low for the general population as well. So in terms of coupons, they're not clipping coupons in preparation for their shopping trips, regardless of the coupon format, whether it's in a circular, online, or mobile. The Hispanic shoppers do not use this as part of their pre-shopping ritual. So what drives the store visit? At the same time, Hispanic shoppers have proven to be more spontaneous and impulse-driven when compared to non-Hispanic shoppers. This is both before and during their shopping visit. This is a result of them spending less time on their pre-shopping activities, and they're shopping more with people who are willing to provide in-store events and experience. I mentioned before they're willing to try new items. This is interesting, and it indexes much higher for the Hispanic consumer. Their willingness to try new things really focuses on the store level. This probably has its roots in being spontaneous or their preference for in-store experiences, or both. But one thing you will hear over and over today is that this Hispanic shopper is spontaneous and prefers an exciting in-store experience. For those of you retailers considering how sampling and cross-merchandising could play well to this audience in addressing this behavior. It should come as no surprise also that the Hispanic millennial is even more interested in trying new products, especially in the categories of food and non-alcoholic beverages. Those index the highest against this target. As I mentioned, freshness beats price, and this is true of the Hispanic shopper. And it's probably because they are creating interesting recipes using the freshest ingredients, produce like tomatoes and lettuce, onions, and dairy items such as cheese, sour cream, and yogurt. And then they're coupling that with fresh tortillas and more. So the LATAM research supports that when shopping, the Hispanic consumer will focus on fresh and stores that can deliver freshness and products as the only attribute they'll purchase. Like everyone else in the world, the Hispanics are online and using smartphones during their shopping event. Overall, 43% of these Hispanic consumers use their smartphone in-store. That's even higher for the millennials. The number one searched item is coupons, which gives retailers and you manufacturers an opportunity to display coupons on mobile and in-store. The QR code is a very interesting item that you could use to promote against this target, whether on signage or on the package itself. And the best thing to put on these would be a coupon, especially against the Hispanic target. When we look at post-shopping behavior, Hispanic shoppers are engaging with retailers and brands on their social media sites. There's also an opportunity to create relevance within your social channels to reach this important consumer. And there you see the percentages that they are interacting on each of the social channels. No surprise that Facebook is highest, and then Twitter, and you see the other ones there. When engaging with a brand on social media, it's not the same thing as what we consider brand loyalty. For example, if a Hispanic shopper buys a brand at the store because it's new or being sampled, they want to learn more about it or share a post, and they'll do this online with others. Therefore, it's important for retailers and brands to create an exciting, dynamic environment while engaging this consumer shopper while they're in your stores and they're online. Let's talk about retailer preference. Where do these consumers like to shop? Why are they shopping there? And what are their preferences by retailer? Like most Americans, the Hispanic shopper visits many different retailers in many different channels to meet all of their household needs. That is obviously true of the general population as well, and we're seeing that becoming more and more fragmented as they try different stores to reach their different needs. For the Hispanic consumer, Walmart is the most widely visited retailer and is perceived to have the best prices. However, when we look at the drug channel, this scores very high on loyalty programs. This is important because Hispanics value loyalty programs. And when you look at how much, 83% of Hispanics use a loyalty card on a regular basis. Not surprisingly, they use this for in-store savings, followed by coupons. This is very high when you consider that 57% of the total U.S. consumer base uses loyalty cards. It skews higher because Hispanics are included in the 57%. So that difference is even larger. There's continuity in Hispanic shoppers visiting Walmart most often, and then choosing fresh over price. When we think about Walmart and they think it has the freshest products, especially in dairy, this provides an opportunity for the retailers to promote fresh and local in the dairy department, and this will entice that Hispanic shopper. When we look at Walmart and Target, they ranked high by Hispanics, and they believe that these stores are for people like me. As with any retailer or product or program, the more you connect with the target consumer, the more loyal they will be. On this next chart, you see that regardless of the preference and preferred language, there are significantly more Hispanics who want Spanish translation in-store and on product packaging. Regardless of the time that the U.S. Hispanic shoppers spend, their language and Spanish language on signs and packaging, they'd like to see more. So as you look at language preference, it affects the desire for the Spanish language they would like to see in store. The desire for Spanish language and its availability increases as the Spanish language preference increases. So if you look across all the potential places for Spanish language to be used, it's significantly more on Spanish-preferred Hispanics, and they want to see the availability of that, and the Spanish, more so than the Spanish and bilingual Hispanics, and significantly more than the bilingual Hispanics. And you can see it as the chart moves left to right. They want to see more in the way of Spanish speaking and Spanish language translation on all of the products that they see, packaging, the product features, ingredients, etc. Overall, shopping trips are declining, but at a much faster rate among Hispanics. Manufacturers and retailers need to capitalize on the Hispanic shopping occasion. They spend 9% more than non-Hispanics per shopping trip. Basically, this means that Hispanic shoppers are less likely to be brand loyal and more likely to purchase new, interesting products as they see them in store. This supports what we've already reviewed. As the previous slides say, Hispanics are willing to experiment and try new things. Sampling is a critical element to use in store to capture this audience. Their perception of private label is very different. Interestingly, Hispanic shoppers are not as enamored with private label as the rest of the U.S. population. For years, food retailers have gone to great lengths to improve the quality and image of their private label brands. However, the majority of Hispanic population, about 78%, believe that private label products are equal to or not as good as national brands. So now let's switch to what Hispanics think about dairy and how they interact with the dairy consumer and products. Overall, the Hispanic consumers love dairy, but like the non-Hispanic consumer base, it is not consistent across the age groups and level of acculturation. What's important is the fact that as a whole, they represent a significant part of the overall sales for each category. So if you look at milk sales, for example, Hispanic consumers represent 13% of those overall sales. Cheese at 12%, you see yogurt there at 12%. Yogurt drinks is much higher at 30%, indicating that they're willing to try new things in the way of yogurt, drinkable yogurts, and kids index higher in yogurt. Ice cream stands at 9%. As this is seen as an aggregate, especially in milk, where Hispanic sales and consumption have resulted in all the sales growth for the category. So basically, Hispanics are growing the milk category overall. In all channels, the Hispanic volume was significantly larger than all the consumers, most notably in mass and club. Like most consumers, milk consumption does decline in the Hispanic population as they age, but it remains very high in children. So don't forget to use children as the influence, especially when you're looking at pairing with products like cereal and pizza. When Hispanic kids were asked to name their top 4 favorite foods, these are pretty consistent with the general population in that pizza ranks number 1, cereal, dairy products, dairy milk, and yogurt. Yogurt does index higher, as I mentioned, with kids of Hispanic descent, and new products are also important for this category. Hispanics also love milk at breakfast, and this probably speaks to the fact that they are having more family meals as well, and they're primarily using this milk with cereal. Now's the time to promote the nutritional value of milk, because that's an important element to this audience as well, and it makes a difference to the parents. When you see here in terms of milk, The Hispanic population recognizes the nutritional value of milk, especially calcium. When they were asked to name what the nutritional elements are within milk, you see there they were recognizing unaided calcium, folic acid, omega-3, and a probiotic. Whole milk is a preference to this audience. Hispanics drink 66% more whole milk than the general population. And as we know, whole milk is a category that's growing, and Hispanics have been leading the way. They cite facts like it tastes better and it's more nutritious. And this is probably given the fact that most Hispanics were raised on whole milk and full-fat products. Another key area to look at growth for Hispanic audience is coffee and cream, coffee and milk. You can't go wrong cross-promoting these items together for the Hispanic consumer when you think about the fact that 83% of the Hispanics drink coffee. And this is much larger than the general population, and they have the highest consumption. We also know that 67% of them will add cream or sugar or milk to their coffee. How about yogurt consumption? Yogurt is important for this audience, and unlike milk, sales have increased as they've become more acculturated and with age. Yogurt consumption for the U.S.-born Hispanics is pretty on par with the U.S. population in general. Overall, the yogurt category is declining, but Hispanics are driving the growth at Walmart and Club. And as we know, Walmart is a large percentage of the shopping and the sales, so it's nice to have that increase within Walmart. When we look at drinkable yogurts, they're very important to the Hispanic consumer, and they're a great snack for children and adults. Hispanic yogurt continues to grow in both sales and variety. And this is an opportunity for both kids and adults as we look at new product and new product extensions. Focusing on convenience and nutrition drives sales in this category as well. It's often preferred that yogurt for Hispanic families be convenient and nutritious. Hispanics and cheese. No surprise, the general population loves cheese. Hispanics use cheese in a lot of recipes and index much higher than the general consumer. But we probably already know that. But like yogurt, cheese consumption increases with the acculturation and age of the Hispanic population. It's a great opportunity for us to sample new cheeses and items and to promote recipes that include cheese. When you look at cheese volume, we're experiencing strong sales growth in the category across a broad range of cheese products, and the Hispanic population is leading the way in this area. So there you can see growth in the Hispanic volume by mass, club, and the rest of the classes of trade. Mass has the largest increase, as you can see there. For the Hispanics and the cheese-loving Hispanic, their favorite is Queso Fresco. It's in natural and irregular format and with full fat. Not surprising, Hispanic millennials love cheese even more. They account for 15% of the total cheese sales. And I'm going to talk to you about an interesting fact. When you look at the merging cultures and how much influence the Hispanic consumer and population is having on the general population, did you know that tortillas and taco kits outsell hamburger and hot dog buns at retail. When was the last time you had a tortilla or a taco kit promotion? Retailers should really think about this during key sales time periods. And interestingly, salsa boasts twice the dollar sales of ketchup. Again, just really demonstrating the impact that this audience has on the general consumer and our usage and trends. That was a lot of information, but I am now going to turn it over to Jamie Liebig, and she's going to condense all of that information and provide the so what. Now, what do I do with that?
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Beth. I appreciate you taking us through all that information. And I'm just going to, Sarah, if you can switch our screen over, switch it over to me, that'd be wonderful, and I'll take over. All right. So as Beth mentioned, I'm going to try to boil this down for you into something kind of that you can take away and do something with. So we're in the home stretch. Beth shared with you 50-some slides with a lot of great information about Hispanic consumers, their shopping habits, retailer preference, and how dairy really fits into their lifestyle. So I'm going to boil it down to 4 key insights that I want you to walk away with, and then I'm going to provide you some activation ideas to help you increase your relevancy with the Hispanic consumer. All right, here they are. So for those of you who have been taking notes the whole time, here's a quick summary for you to write down. For those of you who have been multitasking, not pointing fingers, we're all guilty of this sometimes, here's a 1-slide summary of everything that was presented so far. And I'm going to read through these to make sure that we're all on the same page, so bear with me. First key insight, Hispanic consumers are spontaneous shoppers who are willing to try new things. 2 is Hispanic shoppers appreciate and respond to Spanish language materials. 3rd, Hispanic consumers are family-centric and buy dairy products because they are fresh and nutritious. And lastly, Hispanic consumers are dairy lovers, and will consume even more dairy when you give them ideas to pair dairy with. So let's talk about now some ways to activate, whether you're a retailer, a manufacturer, or a food service operator. For my fellow left brain folks on the phone, I'm going to talk through these, but I'll also share some photos for all of you right brain listeners on the phone. But the ultimate goal with all of the recommendations is to increase your relevance to the Hispanic consumer, leading to increased dairy sales. So what's great about all the ideas that I'll share with you today is that Hispanic and non-Hispanic consumers are going to appreciate the things that you're doing. So let's talk about the first insight. Hispanic consumers are spontaneous shoppers who are willing to try new things. Retailers, when you're adding new items, make sure you call them out on the shelf and let your shoppers know that you have them in your store. While you're at it, take a picture of the new items and post them on your Facebook page and sample them. If you've got a new product that maybe is unfamiliar, take a weekend, take an hour on the weekend and let your Hispanic and non-Hispanic shoppers try these new products. This is going to give your shoppers another way to try these new items, give them the opportunity to see these, that you're carrying these. So, because remember, Hispanic consumers, they like to try new things. And who says dairy items have to stay in the dairy department? Other products like soft drinks get multiple placements in the store. So put new milk and dairy items, drinkable yogurts, in your deli or near the checkout. And you're going to capture those impulse purchases with these new items. And manufacturers, as you develop new products, don't forget about products and flavors that resonate with Hispanic consumers. Remember that as Hispanic consumers acculturate, their consumption of yogurt and cheese increases. So make sure you're giving them the flavors they're looking for. And when you're launching new product lines, make sure you provide retailers materials that can be used in store to connect with shoppers. And don't just talk about the benefits of the product. Really focus on connecting with what's important to them. And food service, you guys do a great job of meeting the needs of your diners. But why are Greeks the only ones who have sauces made with yogurt? Use cheese and yogurt in your recipes, but also tell your customers what you're doing, and they'll be excited to try these new things. And if you've got an opportunity to sample a new item, they'll be even more excited. So product sampling, it can really help you grow dairy sales to Hispanic consumers, but it can also help you grow your sales of Hispanic dairy products to non-Hispanic consumers. Earlier, we heard that Hispanic cheese makes up about 2% of total cheese sales, and that queso fresco is the majority of that volume. Your non-Hispanic consumers have interest in these products too. So think about sampling Hispanic cheeses in ways that they can be used, for example, with quesadillas. Or sample Oaxaca cheese. It's very similar to string cheese, but it's wrapped up in a ball, and it's something that would be a great item for an after-school snack for kids. Many of you already cross-promote cheese with taco shells and tortillas, but don't just utilize the Mexican blend, that the major brands have out there. Also use some of the authentic Hispanic cheeses to pair as well. And from a food service perspective, whether you're a college cafeteria, a hospital, a restaurant, or an in-store dining area of a grocery store, create a fun atmosphere for your Hispanic customers. Go beyond Taco Tuesday. Have fun with it. Bring in a mariachi band. It'll create a fun Hispanic-inspired ambiance. Both your Hispanic and your non-Hispanic customers will have fun with this. So I realize that many Hispanic consumers are bilingual, but as we heard earlier, they appreciate and respond positively to Spanish language materials. We heard earlier that many Hispanic shoppers identify that Walmart and Target are stores for people like me. Think about what Target and Walmart do. They integrate bilingual signage throughout the store, and they use Hispanic shoppers in their ads. It makes these two stores relatable to Hispanic consumers. So if you're a retailer, start incorporating images of Hispanic consumers in your marketing efforts and utilize bilingual signage throughout the store. If you have employees who are Spanish speaking, encourage them to communicate in Spanish to your Hispanic shoppers. Manufacturers and processors. I know that adding bilingual copy on product packages is tough. We have got limited space on packaging, but maybe you can incorporate bilingual marketing materials or share bilingual messages on your social media channels. And food service operators. You've heard of Christmas in July, so how about a Cinco de Mayo celebration in another part of the year to generate some excitement? Or serve authentic old world recipes that bring back memories for Hispanic consumers. So have fun with it, but be authentic. Work with your Hispanic employees to help you figure out your plan. Just remember, it's about the experience, not just putting up a bilingual sign and thinking you're going to be relevant to Hispanic consumers. Remember when we talked about that bilingual packaging? Well, if you've got limited space on pack and you can't do it, you can utilize technology to provide these translations. Or if you're a retailer or food service operator, develop a sign in Spanish and include a QR code to drive even more engagement for Hispanic consumers. The great thing about QR codes is that you can change the content behind the scenes while still using the same code. So you don't have to go and spend a ton of money on printing elaborate signs or spend a ton of money to do this stuff. And manufacturers, as you look to develop new products, remember to consider the influence from Hispanic consumers. Utilizing flavors that resonate with Hispanic consumers will also be relevant to your non-Hispanic shoppers as they look for new flavors. So when we think about why Hispanic consumers purchase and consume dairy products, as we heard earlier, and as the third takeaway is, they do it because they feel good about providing their family with fresh and nutritious products. Regardless of the point of purchase, most Hispanic and non-Hispanic consumers don't realize that milk is a naturally local food, going from the farm to the store in about 48 hours. Many consumers also don't realize that a glass of milk contains 8 grams of protein. So whether you're a retailer, a manufacturer, or food service operator, make sure you're telling your customers the inherent goodness in milk and dairy products and communicate its freshness and its local nature. If you're a retailer, create a dairy department page to communicate this information. Many of you have department pages on your websites for produce, bakery, meat, but I rarely see a dairy page. Midwest Dairy can provide you that information to put on your website. Or you can utilize signage in store to communicate that a glass of milk, contains 8 grams of protein. Or if you're a manufacturer, call out the protein content in your dairy products on pack and utilize social media to tell your brand and your product story. Food service operators, create a table tent highlighting a local dairy farmer, showing where the milk came from to produce the cheese that's used on your pizza, for example. You don't have to have big marketing budgets to communicate this information, so don't be intimidated by the recommendations I'm giving you. You don't have to do it all either, but pick somewhere to start and go with it. And last but not least, the final insight is, remember, Hispanic consumers love dairy. And if you give them more ideas on items to pair with dairy products that they love, they'll consume even more. And don't just stop at the obvious milk and cereal and milk and cookies. Think about breakfast, yogurt and fruit, or yogurt and granola. Think about after school, snacks, tortillas and cheese, and chocolate milk, or Oaxaca cheese that I mentioned earlier, and drinkable yogurt. And manufacturers, help your retail partners out. This is in turn helping your consumers. Use social media to provide cross-merchandising solutions or recipe ideas, and partner with your retailers to make sure Hispanic shoppers see your suggestions. And if by chance you're building from the ground up or you're remodeling, think about ways to have fun with dairy. I realize some of these things that you see here aren't realistic, for everyone on the phone, but remember that Hispanic shoppers often shop with other members of the family. So think about things that would be fun for everyone: a milk and cookie bar, a yogurt parfait bar, or an ice cream shop. Things that the whole family can enjoy. As I mentioned earlier, whether you're a retailer, a manufacturer, or food service operator, take one or two of these insights and think about enhancements that you can make in your physical location, on your website, or on your social media that are going to resonate with your Hispanic shoppers. This isn't rocket science, guys, so you don't have to overthink it. As more Hispanic consumers are online, make sure you utilize social media to connect with information that's relevant to their families and their lifestyles. You don't have to have huge marketing budgets. I know I've said this a few times. And you don't have to have elaborate social media presence or expensive signage. Keep it simple, but keep it relevant, and your Hispanic customers are going to appreciate it and realize that you get them. So that's all we've got for today. I hope you've picked up a nugget or two that you didn't have prior to joining the webinar, and I hope that I've inspired you with some of the ideas from an activation standpoint on how you can be more relevant to your Hispanic consumers. You're not in this alone. We're here to help. We've got a lot of information behind the scenes to help you tell dairy's story to relate to your Hispanic shoppers. As Brianne mentioned in the beginning, we'd love to answer any questions that you might have. You can type your question in or raise your hand by clicking on the webinar screen. Sarah, I'll turn it over to you to field any questions.
Okay, we have a question. You indicated that Facebook was the highest use for Hispanics. Where did that information come from?
Beth, do you want to take that one?
Sure, I can. I know it came, I can't cite exactly which study it came from, but it was one of the ones that we picked up. If the person who asked that question wants to dig into it further or wants me to send a backup, I am happy to do that. And my contact information will come out with follow-up from the webinar.
Absolutely, and I'll just, Sarah, if I can just add one more thing to that. So, we shared with you, 65 slides today. We boiled this down from almost 500 slides. So, if there's things that, like Beth said, you want to go deeper in, or things maybe that we didn't mention that you have questions on, reach out to your relationship manager, Beth, Brianne, or myself, and we can, dig a little bit deeper for you on topics that maybe weren't covered here or that you want more information on.
Okay, next question. How is nutrition defined for Hispanic consumers?
I can take that one again. So you'll recall the slide that came up where I talked about the fact that nutrition was cited and was important to this consumer. There were open-ended questions asked in terms of what's important to you about dairy products, and those, one would rise to the top. We choose nutrition, and then they asked probing questions about how you identify nutrition, what's important to you within a dairy product that cites nutrition, and that's where those things came up about calcium, omega-3, etc. And again, if you want more detail in any one of these topics, we can pull that for you, and we could do a mini report. So what we intended to do with this webinar was give you a general sense of the Hispanic population, what they're doing in terms of dairy, what they're doing in terms of shopping, and their behaviors. And any of this can be drilled down further. As Jamie said, there is a lot of information.
That is all the questions.
Okay.
Just a moment.
So-
Catherine has a question. Let me unmute you. Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, I just had a quick question, and I'm sorry if I missed this. Will you be posting the deck at all of what you just shared?
Yes, we will have an email that will come out as a follow-up to this webinar, and it will have a link to both the presentation and a recording of the presentation from today's webinar.
And are you guys okay if we use any of these slides in any of our decks? Will it be in PowerPoint?
I'm going to flip to Sarah and or Carrie. That is a PowerPoint format that can be pulled, correct? The slides are available for you to use.
Okay, great. Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, and I would say, this is Jamie, I would just say, as, we try to, make sure that for each nugget of information we're citing where we got that from. So that would be the only thing that we ask, is make sure, you cite
Yes.
The source of where it came from. That would be the only request there.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is all the questions.
Sarah, there is one more question. This is Carrie.
Oh, yes.
Megan would like to know, do you guys do dairy samples often? Do you pair with different companies to do samples in retail stores?
So we don't, Midwest Dairy does not do samplings, but what I would suggest is, retailers on the phone, partner with your manufacturers. If you decide you want to, sample a drinkable yogurt, for example, partner with your manufacturer to, get the product and such, and then we can even help from a, nutrition or content standpoint of, either the inherent nutrition in dairy or, kind of connecting the dots to where, where dairy comes from. We can provide, information like that to utilize during samplings, but we don't do samplings ourselves. Does that answer the question?
Megan, did that answer your question?
The other thing I would say regarding sampling is we are out and about in a lot of retail, and we do see sampling that we can give you some ideas on products that have been sampled and have been sampled together. In addition, this research, as we kind of top-lined, there are certain products that this consumer enjoys together. So we can share some of those as well, and you could pull in the manufacturers from each of those products. This is an easy one, but cereal and milk, let's say. But there are a lot of other pairings that make sense as well.
Awesome. Any more questions?
Yes, one just came in. I would like to confirm if the Hispanic millennials prefer materials in Spanish, or is this just more for first generation Hispanics? And that's from Carolyn.
I think the answer there would be, it's not millennials as one target. It would be based on their acculturation too, not just their age. In general, millennials that are U.S. born and raised and acculturated into the language, they are okay with seeing it in English. But as a rule, if you can never do bilingual, it's probably a good option.
Yeah, because even those millennials, those that younger generation that grew up here and speaks primarily English, but speaks Spanish in the household with older family members, the research showed that they still like to, you know, it's kind of comforting for them to see kind of that bilingual, you know, signage or packaging, whatever it might be.
And also, Jamie, that might just be featuring Hispanics in your advertising and in your merchandise. Back to the point about Target getting a lot of credit for understanding me.
Yep, absolutely. Any more questions, Sarah?
Nope, that is all.
All right, well then on behalf of Midwest Dairy and Dairy West, I appreciate everyone taking 49 minutes out of their day to spend with us to learn a little bit more about Hispanic consumers. As was mentioned earlier, we'll get out a link to the recording in the deck. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to whoever you receive this follow-up email from, and we can go deeper with you on any topics you'd like to. Thanks so much.